Hello YouTubers, I want to welcome you to another edition of Bargain Bin Gear. And this episode should be quite interesting. Boy, where do I begin? Well, it just so happened that this past weekend I decided to scout the local stores, see if there was anything interesting music gear wise. And I saw the usual kind of little tiny practice amps and things like that. And then out of the corner of my eye I came upon what looked very interesting to me anyway, and it was a 1x12 cabinet. Right? But it was very unusual looking. I thought, what is this? And, I skipped on it the first time, but I did pick it up and notice it was quite heavy. And it was advertised as a bass cabinet. Right? And not only that, a rock driver bass cabinet. Now what is that? I never heard of rock driver. I thought, well, maybe it is some kind of bass brand I don't know about. And the only reason I'd be looking for a bass cabinet is because it's small. I had a 12-inch speaker, and so I thought, well, I could probably use that. If I was playing in a small place or something, have a small little bass cabinet there, and then I could use kind of a PA head or a bass amp, something like that. And they had a price of about $120 on it. So of course I offered them $100, and then they said, yeah, okay. And I thought, well, great. I didn't want to pay more than that, really, just because I emulate bass, I'm not a bass player, So $100, I thought, well, there you can't really lose. And I found it very interesting. It had a metal plate, or metal grill, I'm sorry. Yeah. A metal grill in this kind of weird, super thin, almost carpeting covering. And I mean, it was solid as can be. And it said Vintage Series. Right? Had a little tag on the corner saying Vintage Series. In any case, I liked the size of it and the form of it, and I thought, well, for $100, look, even if the speaker is blown or whatever, I could use the cabinet and put my own speaker in there that I wanted to. That was the idea. So, well, let's take a look at it first. Why, there it is. It's kind of weird. It has this kind of blue tint, as if the carpeting was kind of blue. Very bizarre. So here it is, right, as you can see, and let me show you. It's actually a closed back cabinet. I don't know if you can see any of that. There we go. That's the back plate there. And so there we go. It's a grill holding a 12-inch speaker. And here you got, right? Wow, Rock Driver Vintage Series. So there it is. So it's really small, but the size is really appealing to me. It's got a handle, very solid as well. And to think I only paid $100 for it, and I would easily, after listening to it, put it up against cabinets, you know, that costs $300, $400, even $500. I kid you not. Alright, so there it is. And notice that the front grille, I think it's missing the logo. Hughes and Kettner logo up at the top is just not there, which is fine with me. I mean, it looks great, I think, just as it is. There. So as you can see, it's very pleasing to the eye, I think. I love the idea of the little metal grill there, and the size of it. It's no bigger than my Vox little tiny 1x12 cabinets, which are the smallest cabinets I own. So this one, but it doesn't seem to be that small, but it actually is. So I found that very interesting. Okay, now moving on. So I get it home, okay? And very first thing I do is hook it up to my bass amp, which has an external speaker out, okay? And this is an 8-ohm cabinet, just so you know. And right away I knew there's something's wrong here. The bass I was getting was puny, tiny. Maybe. Now I'd hooked this 1x12 cabinet up to my Dean Bassola bass practice amp. And I mean, it's not the greatest sounding bass amp by any means, but it should have at least matched the internal speaker of the bass practice amp, you know. But it didn't even do that. I mean, this was probably one of the worst sounding bass amps I've ever heard. Bass cabinet, right? Terrible. Just, I mean, well, just, there was no bass, really. So, scratch that. That was a complete fail. However, this had gotten me to think, well, wait a minute, right? The bass couldn't possibly be that bad. I mean, they wouldn't even put that on the market. And this is when it dawned on me, wait a minute. This is the Vintage series, right? And I had looked online for Rockville, right, company. I didn't find a Rockville company at all. In fact, the only reference I found to Rockville was by a company called Hughes and Kettner, right? And they make, you know, those blue amp heads that light up blue and things, the Tube Meister and so on. Alex Lifeson of Rush used to use Hughes and Kettner amps. So, I mean, this is a pretty darn good company. I thought, wait a minute. This is either the worst bass amp ever, or maybe it's not a bass amp at all, and is in fact a guitar cabinet, right? And not only that, a Hughes and Kettner guitar cabinet, right? with it probably a decent speaker in it. So I looked online, and indeed, Hughes and Kettner does use the Rock Driver Vintage Series 12-inch speaker. And maybe this is what I have here. So I went ahead and plugged it in and couldn't believe what I was hearing, quite frankly. Remember, I only paid $100 for this cabinet. And if it was a bass cabinet, I wouldn't even have paid the $100 because it just wasn't a bass cabinet. That's all there is to it. But guitar-wise, guitar cabinet-wise, I couldn't believe it. And as you'll recall, in the past videos, I think 2 videos ago, we did the Cannabis Rex speaker swap into a Seismic Audio 1x12 cabinet. Well, this cabinet I hooked up sounded just as good. I kid you not. I mean, this wasn't some cheapo sounding guitar cabinet. It was amazing, right? I mean, just every bit as good as the Cannabis Rex, for sure. I did find it was a little brighter, but not in a bad way. And I mean, I pushed it pretty hard, didn't distort ever. It just sounded great. And we can take a listen to it here. Alright, now we're going to take a listen to this cabinet. And one thing I should mention is that it either has an Eminence, right, Rock Driver Vintage speaker, or it has a Celestion G12 Rock Driver Vintage speaker. And you say, well, why don't you just open it up and take a look? And I might do that at some point, but I'm very superstitious, because that sounds so good right now. I don't, either speaker is great if it really produces a sound. So let's take a listen to it here. And that's when I knew I was on the right track, that this was no bass cabinet. So here it is. And full disclosure, I have it in stereo, running off 2 little Fender Super Champs X2s, and it's paired with a 1x12 EV coffee can speaker, billed as, right, the greatest speaker ever made, right? And I did some videos on that. If you go through the playlist, you can probably find it. In any case, so they're both 1x12s, and the sound is just fantastic. It's this kind of really nice, warm sound, a little bright, I think, but I mean, really solid, real clean, well balanced. So anyway, yeah, I just think this cabinet, man. Just has that super nice, clear sound, and this is what you want in a cabinet, you know? It's not rattling, it's not adding additional noises that shouldn't be there. Just super clear. And that's what's great, and that's with the stock speaker. So they really, Hughes and Kettner, you know, didn't go for a super cheapo speaker. And I hope to find another one. So listen, I was really blown away, and I wanted to know more about it in the hopes of possibly getting another one. Having a matched pair would be awesome. Of course, easier said than done, sadly. I went online, and man, it was hard to find information on it. Right? It's like it didn't quite exist, really. And maybe that's just due to age, I don't know. However, there's a website called WorthPoint that steered me in the right direction, in any case. And upon more research, I did indeed discover that it is a guitar cabinet. Right? Very bizarre, though. And it is a vintage series guitar speaker. However, there's two possibilities. One is Hughes and Kettner used something called a V12 rock driver, vintage series 12-inch speaker. Right? And guess what? Made by Eminence. Okay? So Eminence built the speaker to Hughes and Kettner specifications. Right? And they say that it's the closest it is to the stock model is the Legend V128 speaker. It's very similar to that particular speaker, which is a great speaker. I mean, it's not, you know, it's not a piece of junk. I mean, this is definitely a high quality speaker. Now, interestingly enough, in some Hughes and Kettner amp, right, they also use a Celestion G12, right, rock driver vintage speaker, which supposedly is very similar to a V30 speaker, which is also a great speaker. In any case, so it was definitely not a bass cabinet, it was a guitar cabinet. Now here's what's interesting. So I went looking to, you know, for other Hughes and Kettner guitar cabinets. And, I mean, I found all kinds, but I never found another one of these. And the weird part is this. I don't know what happened if at some point Hughes and Kettner just decided to use this particular cabinet as a bass cabinet as well. Right? With the metal grills. Because they only had one little part of section, if you like, of guitar amps that they made that had metal grills as well. Very bizarre. But I'm actually blown away by the sound. It is really fantastic. I mean, for $100, You can't lose. I mean, now it's not like in that movie Christine where the kid saw the car, right, and told him, no matter what you're asking, it's not enough. Okay, it's not quite like that. However, for $100, you just can't go wrong. And I mean, this is really a high quality guitar cabinet. It's kind of stunning, really. My hope is to find another one like it, and I don't know, maybe one will, come up for sale or something. Or another thing you could do is buy a bass cabinet that might be similar to that, replace the speaker, and there you go. Very bizarre. And I think it was quite interesting to discover that there are amps and cabinets and speakers and so on that kind of fly by the radar, and there's just not much information on them at all, and yet they're really fantastic. Yeah, so definitely one of my favorite little cabinets, and it just sounds great. I think ideally what I should do is contact Hughes and Kettner and ask them what is it exactly that I have here, and are there others available, and that kind of thing. Obviously it's been discontinued. I mean, it's not something you can buy new. But if I could find another one, I'd be thrilled. And very interesting, the speaker is really interesting. Very much sounds like a Cannabis Rex, even the low end, but a little brighter on there. And it just sounds great, to my ears anyway. Especially for such a small cabinet, So quite interesting. I went from supposedly a rock driver bass cabinet and ended up with a Hughes and Kettner 1x12 vintage series rock driver guitar cabinet, and I don't know how to say this more. The stock speaker in there, the rock driver vintage series speaker, I mean, this is not your average 7080 or something like that. So that's in 7080, or most of the time stock speakers are pretty sad. This particular one is every bit as good as all these replacement speakers, the Swamp Thing, all the Eminence ones, and Celestion ones as well. So it's not a piece of junk, basically. So anyway, this is what I ran across. I'll definitely keep my eyes open and see if another one shows up, or maybe even just the cabinet, and so if you run across one of these, I'd grab it. That's the Hughes and Kettner vintage series rock driver, right? Cabinet or speaker. I have seen where they sell the speaker, right, separately, both the Celestion one and the Eminence one, and it very much did remind me of kind of the Marshall G12 series, because it's kind of bright as well, but just so solid, man. Really, really nice. So anyway, I had a lot of fun researching, trying to find out, what's going on here. What do I have here exactly? Wow, super surprised. Didn't expect that, though, I have to admit. I mean, this is every bit as good as any of the cabinets that I have here, you know, with pretty nice speakers, too. I mean, these are, and this one is just right up there, you know. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to use it daily. It's that good, seriously. And for whatever reason, I really like the form of it. You know, it's heavy, but not too heavy. It's not too big. You know, it's just right on there. You know, it's kind of like with the three bears. You know, with the cups of soup or whatever. All right. Anyway, I wanted to show you that, and very, very pleased. I certainly got my $100 worth, you know. Even though it wasn't what I expected, or what it was sold as, really. But I think it's even better, you know. Just a guitar cabinet of that quality, you know, is really surprising. And so if you run across one, definitely I would grab it. Alright, very good. See you next time.